Welcome to Electric Evolution with Liz Allan. This podcast is about the journey to a more sustainable future in order for us to be able to do our bit to achieve net zero. I'll be discussing a variety of topics with experts in their field in order to educate and increase our knowledge of clean energy, electric vehicles and the electric vehicle infrastructure. So whether you're an individual wanting to make a difference at home, a small business or a corporate, this podcast is just for you. I've got a world record winner with me. Thank you, Kevin. Kevin Booker. It's so lovely to have you on here. I know you've been on a number of other podcasts, but I needed to have you on here. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Now, so when we talk about Guinness World Records, do you want to just give me a list of the Guinness World Records that you've got, if you can remember all of them?
Yeah, so there's four. So there's the
Just four, not many.
Yeah. So there's the most efficient from John O'Groats to Land's End in a Mustang Mach-E, which is 6.5 miles per kilowatt hour. Then there's the one charge stop, and that one charge stop was 43 minutes 17 seconds.
Oh, wow.
And the more recent one is the van record, which is the longest distance in a single charge, which was just over 311 miles, and that was out of a Stellantis van, which has a WLTP of 205, which took the record from the Americans, who had 257 miles, and that was in a van with a 174 kilowatt hour battery, and the e-scooter we did it in only has 68 kilowatt hours usable.
Oh my God, I love this. This is just brilliant. Please tell me how, what started you doing this? Because you before you were actually driving EVs, you were actually trying to drive as efficiently previously to when you were in petrol or diesel cars, weren't you?
Yeah, the reminder came up on my Facebook of basically when it started, which was 2014, so 9 years ago.
Wow.
I've always tried to drive efficiently because of a long distance travelling to work, so I've kind of gamified it and stuff. But actually the first event I did was something with a magazine called Fleet World, which was the MPG Marathon. So it actually came up on my feed because I was in Autocar 9 years ago with the title Ready, Set, Slow, which was it was actually in a Honda Civic diesel, and that was one of the cars which we used to get like high 90s to 100 miles per gallon out of. So it was kind of started back then, and I've just continued it into the EV space.
Oh my goodness me. So go on. So how many miles were you driving to work on a daily basis for you to actually want to do that?
So basically it was a 70-mile round trip, and this was before we could work from home and stuff as much.
Yeah.
So actually it was that every day I thought, well, can I actually make it more efficient but actually not change the time it took me to get there? So that was how I sort of honed my driving techniques on the gentle acceleration, reading the road ahead, and kind of feeding into roundabouts and reading, not just stops. So the way you're taught to drive for your driving test, really, which people forget to apply after they get behind the wheel for a few years.
Yeah, I'd say that I'm probably there as well. And if my husband's listening and watching, he always moans the fact that, so before we got an EV, and I said to you before we started recording, we've had an EV now. We've got the wind knife, and we've had that for about 3 months, and the highest miles per kilowatt hour. And bear in mind, like I say, we've not really had a summer, have we? Not had too much sun. Maybe that's me making an excuse. I've managed to get 5.7. Please just tell everybody, what did you get in the Ioniq?
So out of the second generation, I've had 7 miles per kilowatt hour, and even on a sort of longer trip, one of the people who's my co-driver, the guy called Fergal, actually is from Swindon, so I did from Swansea to Swindon and back on a single charge in the original Ioniq. So much so I had to drive round after because I was determined to see how far it would actually go. So it got me to Swindon and back, and then still had range left in it. In the end, I lost my nerve at 250, and with it saying 1% and kind of not many miles remaining. So then I just wanted to see how far it would actually go. So out of the 30, yeah.
God. So, but what? How many miles per kilowatt hour was that then?
I think that average for the whole trip 6.7. So that was not the best because it around town you'll get 70 on a motorway. 7 on a motorway you won't get 7 miles per kilowatt hour, but 6.7 is not too bad on it.
So as I said, my husband thinks that I drive faster than him. I would say that since I've had the EV, since I've had the Ionic, I have slowed down because actually it is about the miles per kilowatt hour, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? And I am still learning. So I need you to teach me all this because mine feels like a pitiful 5.7. I thought that was really good until you said. Go on.
The one thing with the Ioniq, the second generation one, it doesn't charge massively quickly.
No, it doesn't.
So that's why you kind of, if you can get a slightly better range out of it, it means one less charge stops. You'll actually get to your destination quicker.
Yeah. So it takes. I think from what I understand, we can get a maximum of 46.
Yeah.
Out of a charger. So yeah, if you've got a 50 kilowatt, 46 is fine. You know, and but actually, for me to, we build in that time. Do you know what I mean? The same as everybody else, we build in that time if we have to charge. It was interesting when I took my son up to Durham University. We've been doing university trips, and I did actually drive up there. So we had over that weekend. So we went up on the Friday and came back on the Sunday. And I did actually charge 5 times, but first time was to 100%. The rest of the time were to 80% because I didn't want to kind of put your car. You're not supposed to push the battery anyway, are you? But yeah, I've never managed ever to get that kind of miles per kilowatt hour. So please, can you give me some of your tips because I need to learn how to drive a bit more efficiently, don't I?
Yeah, because I'm spoiled now on charging speed. With the Ioniq 5, I can see 220 kilowatts charging from the right charger.
Oh my God.
And at 90%, you can still see it pull in more than my old Ioniq used to pull.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, at least the biggest thing is we've made that jump. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? We've made the jump. I love the car. I'd never go back to petrol or diesel now. You know, that's the main thing. Actually, do you know what I was going to ask you? How long have you? So when did you make that move from petrol or diesel to electric then?
So the first EV in our household was actually my wife got a Renault Zoe, an original ZE, the 22 one with the rapid charging AC, which I'm glad we haven't got it now because there's not any 43 kilowatt chargers left. But we actually found that was when all the public charging was free, so with ecotricity and stuff. So we ended up using that. Her family's from Leicester, so we used to drive from Swansea to Leicester and take the EV because it was so cheap. Although if I add up the amount of junk food I probably bought in motorway services, it was probably more expensive than a fuel car in the end. But we used that, and it was kind of that got us used to it, and that was when there wasn't massive charging infrastructure. So if one of the chargers en route was broken, there wasn't a plan B because you didn't have enough range to get to the next one. So
how long ago was that then? How many years?
2015.
Right.
So not really a huge amount of time. 8 years.
Yeah, but that's still pretty good. I mean, there's been a lot of people that I've heard sort of been on that journey since that time. But so go on. So did you use some of the way, you know, kind of the way that you drove when you were in a petrol or diesel, and then just kind of moved things over to the EV and then adapted them? What did you do?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing was the regen, which you get on an EV, which you don't get on a fuel car. But all of the techniques of gentle driving and things like that, and just dropping 5 miles per hour off your motorway speed can make a huge difference to your range. And when you had these much smaller range cars, that made a big difference because that meant if one less charging stops, you actually got to your destination quicker than if you'd been going down the motorway at, say, 70.
And okay, so you're saying gentle driving. Does that mean when you're setting off from a junction or from a roundabout, you're not doing what I sometimes do and just put my foot down to get off? You're kind of
Yeah.
Is it managing it in a different way then?
Yeah, it's sort of reading the road ahead, basically. So you're looking at roundabouts to see the gap on the roundabout before you've got to it. So you're not
Yeah,
coming to a. It's trying to keep the momentum up and not
yeah.
actually coming to a stop and not racing off a set of traffic lights. The problem with a lot of EVs is there's no really slow EVs, and that's why people kind of race off at lights, and that in turn is what people say, oh, the tyre wear is worse. I've not had any worse tyre wear on my EV than I have on a fueled car, but if you drive it much quicker, it's the same as if you had a much more powerful car. Because you look at something, say, like a Volvo XC40 Recharge, that's a 400 brake horsepower car, so you're talking 1990s Porsche 911 territory for a car that's just an ordinary car. So they're going to wear things out more quickly if you drive them like that, but you don't have to. You can be really gentle and progressive with the accelerator in an EV, the same as you could in a fueled car.
Yeah, I don't know what it is since driving the EV that, like I say, it has. I have been more. I've not been in the outside lane on a motorway as much. Put it that way. I've kind of been on the inside lane and kind of monitoring how much I'm getting. So when you're driving, are you always driving in eco mode, for example?
Yeah, and most modern cars, eco mode doesn't really compromise much stuff. It tunes the air conditioning slightly so it's not flat out. The other thing that people don't do is they don't use climate control properly. So I get in so many cars where someone's set it, if it's warm, they've set it just to low, or they've set it to high if they're too cold. And it's like, well, actually, you've got a temperature, so you set it to the comfortable temperature. You don't need to have it on max or on minimum. So, and that can make a difference, just thinking about that. So set it to a comfortable temperature, not to just be on boiling hot and then turn it off.
Yeah, and what about when it's cold? What about kind of seat warmers? Because does that make a difference?
Yeah, if you can, it's always more efficient to warm the person than the air, than the person. So that's why a lot more EVs come with front and rear heated seats and heated steering wheels. So that's a better way of doing it, and just use the air conditioning to keep the windows demisted. And a lot of cars do that automatically now.
Yeah, I mean, I must admit, I've got to say, my 18-year-old son absolutely loves the fact that we call them bum warmers in the front seats, not in the back seat. But that's been a real different. It's been really good to actually have that. So this is the first car we've driven that have actually had any of those kind of benefits.
Yeah, this is the geekiness. I can tell what spec model you have by that one. Then
can you? Oh my God!
That means that'll be an Ioniq Premium, because the Premium SE has rear heated seats and the possibly leather trim. I don't know if it's real leather. It looks leather look trim.
Yeah, because it was funny because when we were looking for one, we were talking to an EV specialist, and he was absolutely brilliant. A guy, I'm going to drop his name now, called Sean Denman. He was brilliant, and actually it was just he was talking to me about kind of the different Ioniqs that were coming through, because when we finally decided that that's what we were going to have, and literally they were coming in and going straight out the door. And this is the first car and this is such a punt, it's the first car we've ever bought without test driving. And I mean, and going from a petrol to an electric, I'm not joking, I was totally freaked out by the whole thing, but it just felt right, okay, we've got to do it. We have to do this. And actually this one's worked out, and I am really, really happy with it. It's a great car.
Yeah, the only thing you lose with the electric version over the plug-in hybrid or the hybrid one is you lose the fully independent rear suspension because of the battery pack. So that's the only difference between the other models. But I wish more manufacturers did what they did with the Ioniq. It was basically designed to be an efficient car. I think Hyundai set out to beat the Toyota Prius at the Toyota Prius's game, but then went full electric with it as well. Because even the bonnet, you'll notice, is aluminium, so it's not a steel bonnet.
Oh,
so there's
okay.
lots of stuff they've done to reduce weight on it.
I can't even tell you how it's benefited. I don't know, it's not even benefited. I just love the car. For anybody, we talk about me and you were both in the DOD group, aren't we? The Decade of Doing Agenda group, WhatsApp group. And, there are so many, as we see this, all the negative Nellies coming through. But even I would love to take people out for a test drive in hours, you know, just to try it out, because actually the people who were being negative about EVs probably don't actually drive one in the first place.
Yeah,
Do you reckon? I
yeah,
don't
because
know.
I wouldn't go back. You know, we've got two. My wife drives a Hyundai Kona, and I've got the Ioniq 5, and I wouldn't go back to that. When people say, "Oh, have you got a fuel car for the longer runs?" It's like, no, we've got to. I mean, I will admit that I probably tend to take my wife's car because the Kona is a bit more efficient. So our record in that is over the summer we did 360 miles to a single charge, and I reckon if I'd kept going once it stopped saying how much range, I think I had another 10 miles left in it.
Did
So
you?
I reckon it was easily 370. It would have done.
Oh my God. So hang on. So do you both drive? Have you both learnt, or have you taught each other to drive efficiently, or what? Was it a game? Was it a race? You've gamified things, like you said.
Yeah, it's funny because my wife can actually drive as efficiently as me if she chooses to. So she usually says to prove, well, I can drive as efficiently as you if I want to.
So go on, give me right. So you've just said, kind of looking at. I do think I'm a pretty decent driver, but there were certain things, because I was listening to you on Gary Comerford's podcast, and you were talking about rolling resistance and things like that. So what are the things that you need to think of when you are kind of trying to drive efficiently in that way?
So the biggest thing to look at is certain things like you wouldn't carry a load of junk in your car because that's extra weight. The thing
Yeah,
that people don't consider is tyres.
I
So
was going to ask you that.
so
Yeah.
people might put the cheapest tyres possible on there, but there's a false economy. You do really need to look at the energy ratings. There are companies as well that are specialising in sort of EV tyres. If you look at the work that Enzo tyres have done, because I did a few years ago around Thruxton Race Course and Mission Motorsport, we drove round to get 500 plus. We're aiming to get like as close to 500 miles out of Renault Zoe round Thruxton Race Circuit
Did you?
with
I know
Enzo
Brixton.
tyres.
Oh my
So yeah,
goodness.
so I'm probably got the probably if it was an official record, I've probably got the record for the slowest round Thruxton race circuit, the UK's fastest race circuit, and we were driving round at night as well because they've got a you're not allowed to race at night on Thruxton because but for they didn't have an EV thing, so the EVs could go around. So I've driven round Thruxton at night as well with Mission Motorsport, just round and round and round, just to get the furthest out with the tyres possible.
So, okay, because it just dawned on me then. So, the one thing that we did actually have over the last kind of about 8 weeks ago, I actually had a puncture,
Mm,
and I was up in Nuneaton, so I've been doing quite a bit of work up there. And I had to get an emergency tyre fitter out
mm,
because my kind of my what's it the company that would have come to sort me out
mm.
wouldn't come. That's another story. But I my worry now is that we've put on a non, kind of an unsuitable tire. So what kind of tire ratings are we looking at then?
So you want to look for an A rating for energy efficiency, but also you don't want to compromise on wet grip. So the ideal is one that's A and A. It's harder to get an AA tyre because obviously
Mm,
they don't. Some manufacturers will make a compromise on rolling resistance and then lose wet grip. But there are a number. I think at the moment my car's got, well, mine and my wife's Konas have got Michelin Primacy 4s on, which are a pretty good tyre for A rated. But then we used the Bridgestone tyres with the Webfleet and stuff, so because Bridgestone have an A rated van tyre, and then with the Mustang record we were in an A rated Continental tyre. So all of the brands have A-rated tyres. It's just make sure that, and you find as well they probably last a lot longer as well. So it's a
mm,
false economy. In the past, before I've done EV, I've put cheap tyres on a car, and it's totally ruined the handling on it as well. So it's all, you just need to really read those ratings and stuff. And people don't
yeah.
think of that, and that could be potentially over a, full charge. A E-rated tyre could be 20 miles less range than you've got on an A-rated tyre. So
Actually, so we've got on that now. We've got three Michelin and one not non-Michelin. So I probably need to actually have a look at that one, don't I? But it was,
yeah.
to be honest, it got me out of a massive fix. You
Yeah, because
know,
ideally you need to match them on the axle as well. It's not a legal requirement, but best practice is to have the
have
same
them all, and we
brand
would
per
normally.
axle.
Yeah, we would normally, like I say, it was literally sat outside a
Yeah.
hotel. There must have been some detritus, as we call it, on the road that's gone. It punctured straight in because I've never ever heard a tire go down. It makes such noise. I
Yeah.
thought I was hearing things. You know when you hear this,
Yeah.
psh, and I was just like, oh my God. So yeah, and it was down totally flat like a pancake within like 10 minutes
Yeah.
of parking up. So God knows what I'd gone over. But so tell me what makes a world record. What do you have to do? How do you organize, put, all the organization? How do you get the sponsorship together? What do you have to go through when, even with that decision, when did you decide that you wanted to actually break, kind of the John O'Groats Land's M1 and the van record?
Um,
What was it?
well, basically, one of the things to decide that is kind of, I mean, the person I did the record with, Fergal, has more records than me because he's got the diesel and petrol car records as well. So I did say to him, I'll have to try and get a record. And we thought, well, there isn't an EV one, so we'll do the EV one. So, and then it was trying to find the car to do it because, I mean, we ended up with the Mustang one because Ford were willing to kind of back it and support it because there's always a Guinness license fee for using the logo, which can range into tens of thousands sometimes. So,
My goodness. Okay.
so you can't do it's very difficult to do a record unbacked because they take quite a while to do it. So you need sponsorships and things like that. So I mean, the Mustang was one of the ones we picked because it seemed to have the best kind of all-rounder to get all three records. So it had quite a large battery. I mean, when we did it, it was 89 kilowatt hours usable. They've tweaked it now with software, so it's now 92 kilowatt hours usable. So it's a big battery, which gets the distance in there. It's quite an efficient powertrain, and then it can charge relatively quickly. For a 400 volt architecture car, it can still do above 120 kilowatts. So, and then it's looking on the route to find a charger that's that speed as well. So there's a lot of organisation that goes to it. And with the van record, we just, I think he was one of the EV events, chatting to Sam Clark that he really fancied doing a Guinness World Record because we kind of got him involved as well. And then the three of us, we kind of worked out what record we could go for, and then saw this van one on the distance and thought, I'm sure we can break it. But then we did try a number of vans because there are vans with bigger batteries, but then they're less efficient. So again, it's for the van record, it has to have a ton payload. So the smallest you could go was the e-Scudo, just to get that weight thing. And then, I mean, we could have picked any of the Stellantis vans, to be fair, because they're all the same van. But Fiat were the ones that was kind of involved and went from there. And I think Sam from Grid says quite happy that he's got a certificate that says Guinness World Record now.
Yeah, we saw him. So my husband was speaking at the EV Cafe Partners Day a few weeks back, and we kind of went out in the evening, and he was saying, oh yes, I've got my Guinness World Record, and I was like, yes, I know, it was brilliant. And actually we were watching you and Sam and Fergal on the web. There was a web fleet kind of like, I think it was about 7 or 8 minutes.
Yeah.
Taking you through the actual, kind of going through all the stages. I don't know how you fit all three of you in that van kind of comfortably. How many hours were you at? How many hours were you in it?
I think it was must have been about 10 hours in total. Because it was the van thing was to simulate an urban delivery route, so that's why we ended up doing it in, well, starting off from Spalding, because for Guinness it needed to be flat, so we had to find somewhere in the UK that was flat, and Fergal actually found a route around Spalding which was designed for road cycling, a flat sportive course. So we routed that, and it was flat, the gradient, because it's a beginner's thing, and we used that because it's just to simulate that actually when in the typical urban delivery that the vans would do, it can go further than it says.
Right, exactly. And so what about the fact, so obviously you and Fergal have actually, you've kind of, what your driving style is. And then you had, and I'm not trying to call, please, I'm not trying to call Sam Clark a carbuncle, I'm really not, but you did actually have somebody in the middle, because he took the last leg, didn't he?
Yeah, he wanted to be the person who ran it out. That was his one thing. He said, I want to drive it last, I want to be the person that completely flattens it.
But I suppose it was about kind of the miles per kilowatt hour that you had, the length of time that you went on. Could you have actually, so because it looked like when you finished that you still had some available charge in it, did you?
So basically, just to make sure, we were at quite low percentage when we finished. So once the 311 is quite significant because it's 500 kilometers as well. So that was kind of the to beat the 500 kilometer mark.
Right.
So what we did was we wanted to make sure, because Guinness are really strict on data, so we wanted to make sure, because what we didn't want to do is the battery to go flat and then it not upload all the data to Webfleet,
Right,
and
of
after doing
course.
all that. So we ignitioned off, but then at the end Sam said we've still got some range left in it. So we went out again after the 311,
Did
and
you?
so it actually did 314 miles.
Did it?
But we had to do the Guinness data to the 311 point
Yeah.
and stuff. But then we may have run out totally 7 meters from the chargers, and then
did you?
we had to use the support team, which is the AA, who are the technical witnesses, had to recover us 7 meters in the car park.
Oh no!
So we basically did the last bit in the car park, so there was no risk or anything, and literally it was 7 meters, and they had to connect their charger up and charge it for ages with their vehicle's onboard charger, just for us to get to the rapid charger.
Oh, bless him! Oh my goodness! So you had Webfleet were your sponsors, is that right?
Yeah, Webfleet for the sponsors, Stellantis or Fiat Pro were supplying the van.
And then your support vehicle was
the
the
support
AA.
vehicle was the AA, so we had the 2 patrolmen of the year. So there was one who had the low loader waiting, and then there was the other one who had the breakdown, just the normal recovery van, because they now have an onboard charger on some of their
Yes,
vans.
I saw that. Yeah,
But that was
pretty cool.
which is quite funny because their van's electric as well. So they're technically, I suppose, their van could recover itself, because it's entirely separate power supply for the onboard charger.
Oh my god!
So I suppose they could plug themselves into themselves and recover themselves.
Amazing, honestly. So what was your right? I've got to ask you this. What was your average speed on that journey then?
So the aim for that was to do the average of 30.
Right.
So it was slightly lower on the average on the thing, because we had to stop for driver swaps, which are about
Yes.
30 minutes.
Yeah.
But we couldn't stop the event, so we had to leave it ignition on and just swap drivers and stuff and take it in turns, because what you didn't want to do was actually break the data up.
Yes.
So
yes.
so it was to keep it as a continual ignition on. So the ignition started at the beginning of the record and then stopped at the end of the record. There was no in-between breaks on it.
Oh my god!
So that would bring our average. I think the recorded average on the van was 27. So
Right. I mean, so hang on. So you only just stopped for a very short.
there were about 30-minute driver swaps for.
Right. Okay. But you had to leave. You had to
Yeah.
leave it on.
Yeah,
all
because we
that
needed
time.
it to be a continuous data log.
Oh my goodness. What about? So who was your sponsor doing John O'Groats to Land's End then?
So that was the OEM. Ford did that. So Ford supplied the car and did all the sponsorship and did the stickers and stuff on the car.
And was that
So-
you and Fergal as well?
That was me, Fergal, and Paul Clifton from the BBC. So
Oh right. Okay. Oh my goodness. And how long? What period of time did you do that over then?
that one was weird. That actually we could have done it quicker, but because of the rules on for the support vehicles being the AA, they had to stop every 2 hours. So we had to pull in every 2 hours. Then we did driver swaps and stuff, because we had to have we had to comply to all the health and safety
Yeah.
standards and stuff, which is very strict. So actually, the car could have done it quicker, we could have done it quicker, but we obviously had to make it as safe as possible, especially with the BBC doing it. We all had so there was quite a strict health and safety guidance on how long we were allowed to drive for in each point.
I can imagine. So okay. So if you didn't have those stops, how long would? I'm just interested. How long would it have taken from John O'Groats to Land's End then?
I think we worked it out about 22 hours, between 20 and 22, so
Seriously?
not massive.
Not long at all. My
No,
goodness.
so
So we do have something in common in a way. It's just dawned on me because I haven't done a Guinness Book of World Record. I've not done anything on there, but I have driven from John O'Groats to Land's End. Bizarrely enough, and this is how old I am, okay, people? In 1987, I drove. So I had a car accident in 1987, and I was still a learner driver then. And my driving instructor came up with this wonderful idea that we would do a sponsored driving lesson from John O'Groats to Land's End. And but obviously, you know, you're a learner driver. You can't go on in any of the. Well, you couldn't then, because apparently now you can kind of go on the motorway if you're accompanied by a driving instructor. But I don't remember it being like that in 1987. But we drove. So it was me and another girl. So she won this competition in our local newspaper. To be my co-pilot. So literally we did it over, I think we did it over about 5 days, but as we went down the country, we were being interviewed by various radio stations, and I was on BBC Cornwall. You'd find me looking kind of really, and I was actually, bizarrely enough, I was able to drive, but then I was still on crutches because I had a smashed up ankle. But yeah, so I've done it. And we took 5 days, and you took a very much shorter length of time than we did.
Yeah, well, I actually did it over, well, recently. I did an article with an eco and diesel car with the MG5, because at the time, there's someone I know is a motoring journalist, a guy called Alex Grant, and he had an MG5 press car, and thought, well, actually, you've done it in the Mustang, which is not a cheap car. You know, no one can say it's cheap. So we thought, let's do it at the time before the MG4 was launched. The MG5 was the most affordable electric car. So we did it in that. But the aim with that was not to hypermile or anything. It was just to do normal speeds. And we did it in a similar time to an Insignia diesel. And that was using the normal charging network. We were just stopping at the recommended brakes based on the so that was just in an MG5. And that, when people say EVs don't go very far, so that over a course of 3 days... I drove from obviously my house to him in Cardiff, met him in Cardiff. We drove from Cardiff to John O'Groats, and then drove from John O'Groats to Land's End, and then back to Cardiff over 3 days. So we did like twice the distance, and it was no real difficulty in the MG5. You know, people say about range anxiety. The UK is not big enough to give me range anxiety. There's not enough of the UK. I run out of UK before I run out of battery.
I must admit, though, because I think when the people talk about range anxiety, so I found it when I first started driving, because, you know, driving an EV, but only because it was such a change. Do you know what I mean? You know, but now I've got used to it, I'm fine. But we've got a home. We're lucky. We've got a home charger. But even if we didn't have a home charger, there's a nearest Instavolt, which is kind of less. It's about 5 minutes drive away. Yeah. So it's not a biggie. You know, it's not as if it's caused us any big problem at all. So yeah. Do you know what? I'm gonna come back to what you've just said about hypermiling, because I need you to explain to me. I know you've talked about the way that you drive. What is hypermiling? Is it what you've just explained, but that's one word for it?
So it's basically trying to get the most range out of a vehicle with, in a fuel car, the least amount of fuel, but in an electric car, using the least amount of electricity. And
so what if I'm driving up to Nuneaton, I'm going on the M40 for probably about majority of the journey. 90% of my journey, or 85, is on the M40. What should my speed be to actually hypermile? What's the best way to do it?
So you'll find actually there's a big difference with drag coefficient from like 60 to 70. So you'll notice your range would be much bigger at 60 than 70, and then you charge less, so you end up actually getting to your destination quicker. Yeah. So it's almost sticking with the buses and so not holding people up, but keeping with the flow of traffic. I mean, unless it's a 50, obviously you do have to slow down to the many contraflows and restrictions.
There are
stuff.
Many.
But you've actually got a really good car for being efficient, because actually the adaptive cruise control on the Ioniq is really good.
Do you know something? I'm going to admit I haven't used it.
It's a very good system, because it will just follow the cars in front of you, and whereas a lot of systems are quite eager to press on, this one in eco mode will be quite gentle with the acceleration.
Okay.
But you could I reckon 6 would be easily achievable if you set the adaptive cruise to a speed.
I think it's because I'm a control freak. I'm just like, I want to be in control of this car. So I will try. What other things can you suggest then that will make a? So we've talked about tyres, we've talked about adaptive cruise control, we talked about the speed and looking ahead, for example, at junctions and things like that. Are there any other things that you can
Yeah.
suggest?
Those are the main things. The other thing to look at as well is regen braking, because what you think would be efficient is not necessarily what is efficient.
Oh, tell me.
So lots of people think high regen, one pedal driving mode is
Mm,
actually more beneficial for efficiency, but actually
okay.
you find you're better off being able to do that with your foot brake, because most electric cars have what's two-stage braking. So if you
Mm,
press the brake gently, you can be on the regen rather than the real brakes, and
yes.
you're much better at doing it. What you find is if you're in one pedal driving mode, people tend to be fighting the regen more, so then you tend to be more bursty on the throttle, so you're giving it more power input than it actually needs. Whereas if you've just had it
Mm,
set to low, or the other thing you can do on the car you've got is you've got adaptive regen, so it looks at the radar and the sat nav data.
right.
So it can actually, you'll notice if you put it into adaptive regen, on roundabouts it'll slow down automatically for you because it
Yeah.
knows and it sees the cars in front as well. So it'll slow down and it'll taper the regen to exactly what you need.
Do you know? So hang on. So on our Ionic, it's got three kind of it's got a
Yeah,
three paddle, hasn't it? So three version or three levels
yeah.
of regen. So what will you
So
keep
there's
you?
actually another option, which is you've got the three levels, but you can have it as adaptive regen. So then it looks at the cars in front. So that's in the sub menu on the screen.
Oh my God! You've just introduced me to some other techie thing. I'm gonna have to go at it. Oh my God, Kevin!
And
I
all
didn't know
all
that.
Hyundai's have got that. So the Kona's got it, the Ioniq 5, the Ioniq 6, the new
Good
Kona.
God!
But it takes a lot of data into it because it's a cleverer system than people think because they don't really boast about it. But it does
No.
even looks at GPS data from the nav because you notice on roundabouts and
Yeah.
stuff it can adjust and slow down if there's no cars in front. So
So
it's
you don't need to use the paddles on
no,
the
so
you don't.
the
So
paddles can
it's
adjust
automatically.
how kind of vicious it is, whether it's quite strong or quite weak, but it can do it automatically to a certain level, and you'll see it says auto on it
I will
for
have
a
a look
reason.
at that. Oh my God. You see, I thought, because I'm a bit of a geek about reading through manuals and looking on the internet and stuff, I thought I'd actually covered everything, but you've now introduced
Yeah,
me.
yeah, they don't really shout about that feature, and it's a really
No.
clever feature on all of them.
I think I need to have you in the car next time. One time. Do you know what? You could teach me a lot on this. Because what I was going to say, so originally we met back in, was it May? Oh my goodness. When it was, so the London to Brighton to Paris
That's right. Yeah,
EV rally that my husband, so we both, me and my husband, we were very kindly lent a Vauxhall Mocha from Shane from Chargy. I keep name dropping because I think it's amazing that he managed to do that. Um, so, and like I say, so I saw you in Brighton, but you did the onward leg, didn't you? And then you did the the actual Green Fleet EV rally afterwards, which is mind blowing. I don't know how you did that because I
yeah,
did a little bit of the EV rally.
yeah. So I started off with well, the BYD kindly lent me a car to do the London to Paris to Brighton. Or yeah, London,
Yeah,
Brighton to Paris
yeah,
even.
I knew what you
Yeah,
meant.
that's the one. So I was in a BYD Atto 3, which is interesting because obviously I'd never driven the Atto 3 because
Mm,
it was newly
mm,
launched then.
mm.
So it was interesting to compare because I've driven a lot of different press cars and stuff, how it compared, and actually, it was very favourable to the rest of the cars out there. So did that, and then stopped at Gatwick, left the car to be collected again
Oh God.
with Rick from Generate Media, and then met Webfleet because I was driving a National Grid van for Webfleet to run the Green Fleet EV rally. So that's the third
Oh,
Green Fleet EV rally I've done because I did the original Scottish Evros one around Scotland, which was just after we'd done the record. So it was nice to drive around Scotland
oh.
again, and then the Land's End to John O'Groats one, which was quite familiar because I'd done that. So that was in. I'm trying to think what car that was in. Oh, that was in an EV6.
Was
So
it?
Yeah, so that was the EV6 was quite interesting because by the end, its trip computer was saying it would do over 400 miles to a single charge. So,
Okay. What
and
should it do? What should it have done?
I think its WLTP is three something, 360, 370, I think, off the top of my head.
Oh, you are good. Oh my goodness. So hang on. So you've done what? So have you done all the London to Brighton
No,
rallies
the
then?
first London to Brighton to Paris, that's the first one I've done, and
Right.
then but the Green Fleet rallies I've done them from the very first one, which was Evros, which was the Scottish one.
Oh, you see, I would love to be a driver on that. So I'm gonna put myself out there, people. I would love to be part of that.
Yeah.
So how many people in was so you were in a National Grid van? How was it? Three of you again in the National Grid van?
No, it was two of us this time, so slightly
Okay.
less cramped than the record.
Yeah, because that did look a bit cramped, didn't it? Kind of like with the knees and stuff.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
Sam was saying, "Where am I going to put my foot?"
yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, it's we're all about with at least 6 foot, so we've proved that you can fit three 6 foot tall people in a little van. Well, I say little van. Everything's got bigger now. That's probably a middle-sized van these days.
So what is your what are you wanting to have some more? I'm sure I can imagine you're going to have some more. Kind of. You've got some more Guinness Book of World Records up your sleeve on the way. What you thinking
Don't know.
next?
It's trying to do one. I'd like to do one that spans multiple countries, but it's again trying to
Ooh.
find sponsors because they have to be sponsors that are relevant in all those countries as well.
Oh,
Because
okay.
it's a UK sponsor, it's no real advantage for them going outside the UK.
Yes.
So, and it's trying to find the car that does it. Because you've got obviously you can't just take any sponsor because if the car's not really great on efficiency, it doesn't matter how well you drive it, it's not going to beat one that So that's like saying putting something really big against like a Ford F-150 pickup truck efficiency against your Ionic. It's like if it's an efficiency, then one's going to be far more efficient than the other because just
Yeah.
naturally the shape of them. So it's trying to get the right car and getting the right people involved, and it's on average each of these has taken over a year to secure sponsorship and the logistics and stuff. Because obviously you need to do it with warmer weather to get the best out of the EV as well. You wouldn't pick the middle of winter to do a distance
Oh,
record.
no. No, actually, do you know what? Now you're just saying this because obviously we're just coming into winter now. What other things would you suggest to kind of myself and other new EV drivers out there that would actually help us manage our kind of our range and the way that we're driving during the winter months?
One of the things would be preheat your car when you're still on the charger. That's a
Hmm.
good thing, so you get some heat into the car. And the
Mm.
other thing is to use heated seats, heated steering wheels, so you heat the person rather than you heat the air to heat the person.
Yeah,
So that's always the most efficient way.
yeah, okay. So so if you are, hang on, so when did you do the last? Is it a couple of months ago now since that you did
Yeah,
the?
the last one, which was the van one.
So what are we looking at? Kind of summer next year,
If
maybe?
if we can if we can organise one or find someone that'll is after another record.
So everybody, if you're listening, if you know anybody who's going to do some
Yeah,
sponsorship, let's get Kevin out there.
yeah.
Yeah, that'd be fabulous. So have you got a number of Guinness Book of World Records that you'd actually like to have?
Um, I don't know. I think the main one is to have one that's sort of efficiency over multiple countries to
Mm,
show that almost to show because you kind of I've shown that you can use an EV in the UK, but loads of people still wary about I can't go abroad with it, and I almost want
yeah.
to say well actually look you can go from somewhere in the UK to somewhere in Europe and in one charge. I'd quite like to try and do a record in something a bit different, something like a Porsche Taycan. But that's purely for selfish reasons because I want to go of a Porsche Taycan, and I'm curious to know how. Because obviously the sports car has lots of things to improve its aerodynamics to make it faster.
Mm,
But can you apply
mm.
your efficiency techniques on that to get the advantage of it? Yes, it's quick, but can it also be efficient? Because there should be certain things about aerodynamics which enable both.
Well, I do know somebody who works for Porsche, who's a product specialist, an electric EV product specialist. So maybe I'll have to put you in contact with him. He's actually been on this podcast, so I shall maybe introduce you if you're interested.
Yeah, because it would be good. That's one of the things that I'd like to show, that actually one of the advantages of EVs over traditional fuel cars is you can have, whereas a fuel car you'd have a massive engine which would be really thirsty. With an EV, because it only uses the energy you require to drive it gently, to show that you can have both, the best of both worlds. So you can have a really quick car which is really efficient as well.
Yeah. It's just so, honestly, I really, really do need you in Reading to kind of just sit with me for a bit, because actually you've just taught me so much. I do resist driving really, really slowly, but I think actually just to be able to prove that I can kind of be as efficient as well. I'm never going to be as efficient as you, but maybe me and my husband, we need to gamify our our driving next time.
Yeah, the key thing to take away of it, it's being efficient and not about driving slowly. Sometimes you actually get to places quicker because it's more about reading the road ahead, so you're almost keeping that momentum. Whereas, where you see a lot of people stop at an empty roundabout, and it's like, no, because you should have read the road ahead and seen what's on that roundabout. All the stuff you're taught to do on your driving test, which people don't do, as I've said before. Yeah,
no, like I say, I think I'm all right. My husband's going to be saying no, she's not, but we'll have that conversation another time. But listen, Kevin, thank you ever so much for joining me on this today. It's been so interesting, and I will be listening back to it myself and kind of making notes because there's so many different things that as an EV driver you can do to kind of increase that efficiency. So it's been brilliant to hear you talk about this.
Thanks for having me along.
So right, if anybody you're kind of, if people are wanting to get hold of you, is a good place for them to find you on LinkedIn? Do you kind of post much on there?
Yeah, LinkedIn, or I've got Twitter, X now, isn't it? That was
that one. The new one that's not.
Yes, the artist formerly known as Twitter, I guess.
Right, so what I will do, I will actually make sure that all of your links are in the show notes afterwards when this goes live. But listen, again, thank you for your time. It's been brilliant, and I hope to actually be driving with you one day in one of these rallies, because it'd be fabulous. Not necessarily, I wouldn't want you to rely on me in any Guinness World Records, but just I'll learn a thing or two from a rally. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
And to everybody else, I'm going to say thanks for listening and watching, and I shall see you next time. Bye-bye. You've been watching Electric Evolution with Liz Allan. Don't forget to subscribe and click on the bell icon, and you'll receive all of our weekly videos. Thanks for watching. See you soon. Bye.